18,000 women, all of them starving, all of them sick, all of them living in absolute terror. And standing at the center of it all, one woman, not a general, not a commander, a 19-year-old girl from a small German farm who had dropped out of school and couldn't even hold a job. Yet somehow, she became the most feared person inside one of the deadliest places on earth. Her name was Irma Grese, and the women who survived her called her something else: the hyena of Auschwitz, the beast of Belsen, the angel of death. Before we get into what she did, let's talk about something that will genuinely disturb you. Every single person who saw Irma Grese for the first time said the same thing. She was beautiful, stunning, even. Blonde hair, blue eyes, perfect posture. She looked like someone's daughter, someone's sister, a girl you'd see walking down the street and think, what a lovely young woman. Dr. Gisela Pearl, a Jewish doctor who was imprisoned at Auschwitz and was forced to watch Irma operate every single day, described her like this. She said Irma was one of the most beautiful women she had ever seen in her life. Her face was clay, angelic. Her eyes were the most innocent eyes one could imagine. And then Dr. Pearl said something that will stay with you. She said Irma Grese was also the most depraved, cruel, and creative monster she ever came across in her entire life. That contrast, that gap between what she looked like and what she actually was, that is what makes Irma Grese one of the most studied, most disturbing figures to come out of World War II. Because we expect evil to look like evil. We expect it to announce itself. We expect monsters to look like monsters. Irma Grese broke every single one of those expectations. She was 19 years old when she walked through the gates of Auschwitz. By the time she was done, she had power over 18,000 women, and she used every bit of that power in the most horrifying ways imaginable. So how did a shy farmer's daughter from rural Germany become this? That is exactly what we are going to find out today. Let's go back to the beginning. Irma Grese was born on October 7th, 1923, in a small village in northeastern Germany called Rechen. Her family were farmers, poor, working class, deeply ordinary. Her father Alfred was a strict man, deeply religious, physically harsh with his children. Her mother Bertha struggled under the weight of that hardship for years. And then in 1936, when Irma was just 13 years old, her mother took her own life. Think about that for a moment. 13 years old. Your mother is gone. Your father is cold and violent. You are growing up in a Germany that is changing fast, a Germany where Adolf Hitler has been in power for 3 years, where Nazi ideology is being pumped into schools, into youth groups, into every corner of daily life. Irma dropped out of school at 14. She worked a few odd jobs, a farm, a shop, a local hospital where she tried to train as a nurse. None of it stuck. She was restless, directionless, and then the Nazi Party gave her something she had never had before: purpose, identity, belonging. She joined the League of German Girls, the female branch of the Hitler Youth, and for the first time in her life, Irma Grese felt like she was part of something, something powerful, something important. In 1942, at the age of 18, she volunteered for the SS Auxiliaries and was posted to Ravensbrück concentration camp for training. This is where the transformation truly began. She was no longer a dropout from a broken home. She was SS. She wore the uniform. She carried the authority. And she discovered very quickly that she liked the feeling of power over other people. After her training at Ravensbrück, she was transferred to Auschwitz-Birkenau in March 1943. And that is where the story gets truly dark. Auschwitz-Birkenau. If you know anything about the Holocaust, you know that name. The largest, most deadly Nazi concentration and extermination camp ever built. Located in occupied Poland, over 1 million people, the majority of them Jewish, were murdered there, gassed, shot, starved, worked to death. This was the place Irma Grese walked into at age 19 and began climbing the ranks. She was fast, focused, and completely devoted to the Nazi ideology that had shaped her entire teenage life. Within a short time, she was promoted to senior SS supervisor, Oberoffizieren, the second highest rank a female guard could hold at the camp. She was now in charge of the entire women's section, and that women's section held somewhere between 18,000 and 30,000 female prisoners at various points. Women from across Europe, Jewish women, Polish women, Hungarian women, Czech women, women who had been torn from their families, had their heads shaved, had numbers tattooed on their arms, women who were already being slowly killed by starvation, disease, exhaustion, and fear. Tens of thousands of them packed into 62 barracks, surviving without enough clean water, ravaged by tuberculosis, typhus, and dysentery. This was the world Irma Grese now ruled. And here's the first twist in this story. Here's the thing that historians and psychologists have wrestled with for decades. Irma Grese did not have to be cruel. She did not have to be sadistic. Other female guards at Auschwitz carried out their duties without becoming monsters. Some were brutal because they were ordered to be. Some kept a distance. But Irma Grese, she chose to go further. Much further. She did not just enforce the rules of the camp. She invented her own brand of terror on top of them. She had a whip, braided from wire and cellophane, that she carried everywhere. She had a pistol, and she acquired 2 massive trained attack dogs, which she deliberately kept hungry so they would be aggressive, violent, and eager to attack on command. Survivors described how she would walk through the camp every single day, not just inspecting, hunting, looking for someone to punish, looking for an excuse, or sometimes not even bothering with an excuse at all. Polish survivor Daniel Safran testified after the war. He said he saw Grese beat prisoners in Auschwitz, and then again at Bergen-Belsen just 2 weeks before British troops liberated the camp. He said she had a pistol but chose to use a riding crop instead. He said the beatings were very severe. The key word there, chose. She chose the whip over the gun, because the gun would end it quickly. The whip would not. Multiple survivor accounts describe her beating women to the point of death and beyond. According to testimonies from the post-war trial, she was responsible for the deaths of at least 30 prisoners every single day through beatings, shootings, or sending them to the gas chamber. 30 people, every day, for months. Let that number sink in. But here's something even more chilling. The prisoners feared her not just because of the violence. They feared her because of how she felt about the violence. Because every survivor who described Irma Grese said the same thing. She was not doing this reluctantly. She was not following orders with a blank face. She appeared to enjoy it. Genuinely, deeply enjoy it. Survivor after survivor described how her eyes would light up, how she would smile. One doctor who witnessed her conduct described the physical signs of excitement and pleasure on her face as she watched prisoners suffer. She was not numb to the cruelty. She was energized by it. She sought it out. She created situations specifically so she could inflict more of it. And that, more than any single act of violence, is what made Irma Grese uniquely terrifying. Inside a camp full of brutal guards, she stood out. In a system built entirely on cruelty, she found ways to add more. Now we get into the specific acts that survivors described at her trial. These are not easy to hear, but they are important because they are the documented reality of what absolute unchecked power over human beings looked like in the hands of Irma Grese. The first thing you need to understand is her relationship with the selections. Auschwitz ran on a system called selection. When new prisoners arrived, SS doctors would line them up and decide in seconds who would be sent away and who would be sent directly to the gas chamber. The elderly, the sick, young children, pregnant women, they almost always went straight to the gas chamber. And standing at those selections, right next to SS Dr. Joseph Mengele, one of the most notorious war criminals in history, was Irma Grese. She did not just observe. According to multiple survivor accounts, she actively participated. She pointed. She chose. She decided who lived and who died. Think about what that means. A 19, 20, 21-year-old woman standing at a ramp, watching trains unload thousands of terrified people and sending them left or right, life or death, and doing it without hesitation, without visible emotion, day after day after day. One survivor testified that she watched Grese shoot a woman dead who was standing directly in front of her. She said the woman's blood landed on her shoulder. And then the next day, Irma Grese came to find her and asked, "Are you angry with me?" The survivor said, "Yes, you nearly killed me." And Grese's response was simply, "One down. It doesn't matter. One down. It doesn't matter." That is who we are dealing with. Her attack dogs were a constant weapon. She kept them specifically trained to hunt and attack. Survivors described her riding around the camp on a bicycle with a dog running alongside her, watching the female prisoners on their 16-kilometer forced wake marches. If any woman fell behind, if any woman could not keep up, Grese would order the dog to attack. No warning, no mercy. One of the most disturbing specific accounts documented at her trial described her tying the legs of a woman who was in labor, a woman giving birth, and simply watching her suffer. There are no words that do justice to what that means. And here's where the twist comes in. The twist that historians have pointed to when studying Irma Grese and what she represents. Because when British soldiers finally arrested her in April 1945 at Bergen-Belsen, they expected to find someone who looked like a monster. What they found was a young woman who was almost cheerful, calm, composed. She looked them in the eye. She showed no panic, no guilt, no remorse. In fact, when one British officer moved to arrest her, she pulled out her silver revolver and attempted to shoot him in the back. She was not surrendering. She was not breaking down. She was still fighting, still unafraid, still completely certain she had done nothing wrong. When she was finally taken into custody and asked why she had participated in the atrocities, her answer was simple and chilling. She said, "It was our duty to exterminate antisocial elements so that Germany's future would be assured." That was it. No regret, no horror at what she had done. She believed it. Completely. Totally. To her core. And that is the real twist of Irma Grese's story. We spend a lot of time asking how someone becomes a monster. But Irma Grese never saw herself as a monster at all. She saw herself as a patriot, a soldier, someone doing a necessary and important job. The evil was not hidden from her. She simply did not recognize it as evil. September 1945. The war is over. Germany has surrendered. The Nazi regime has collapsed. And in a courtroom in Lüneburg, Germany, 45 people sit on trial for war crimes committed at Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. This became known as the Belsen trial, one of the first and most significant war crimes trials in history, happening even before the Nuremberg trials concluded. Among the 45 defendants were 16 women, and sitting there, number 9 on the list, was Irma Grese, 22 years old, blonde, still composed, still showing nothing. Survivor after survivor took the stand against her. They described the beatings, the shootings, the dogs, the selections, the specific acts of cruelty they had witnessed or experienced personally. Some of them broke down on the stand. Some of them could barely speak through their emotion. And through all of it, Irma Grese sat and stared at them. Calm, cold. She pleaded not guilty to every charge. She cross-examined survivors with her defense lawyer. She claimed the beatings never happened. She claimed the shootings were exaggerated. She claimed she was simply doing her job, following orders, maintaining discipline in a difficult environment. And here's what makes the trial so haunting, even as films were shown in the courtroom. Films of what the liberating British soldiers had found at Bergen-Belsen. Mass graves, thousands of skeletal bodies, mountains of the dead. Even as those images played in the courtroom, Irma Grese sat impassive, unmoved. The British soldiers guarding her during the trial gave her a nickname. They called her Jutjaw, because of the way she would set her jaw and stare down anyone who spoke against her. She was not frightened. She was not broken. She remained defiant from the first day of the trial to the last. The verdict came in November 1945. Guilty. Death by hanging. Her appeals were rejected. And on December 13, 1945, Irma Grese walked to the gallows at Hamelin prison. She was 22 years old. She walked calmly. She showed no fear, no tears, no last-minute confession or apology. By several accounts, she appeared almost cheerful. The night before her execution, she was heard singing Nazi songs, alone in her cell, hours before she was to die for the crime she had committed. The executioner, Albert Pierrepoint, one of Britain's most experienced hangmen, later wrote about that morning. He said she walked in with a smile. He said she was the bravest person, man or woman, he had ever hanged. And she spoke only one word before he carried out the sentence. Schnell, the German word for quickly. That was it. No speech, no final statement, no apology to the 18,000 women she had terrorized. Just quickly. Make it quick. And then it was over. Irma Grese became the youngest woman executed under British law in the entire 20th century. She was 22 years old. She had been a guard for just 3 years, and in those 3 years she had left a trail of suffering that survivors carried with them for the rest of their lives. So what is the final lesson of Irma Grese? Here is the climax. Here is the thing that should stay with you long after this video ends. Irma Grese was not born a monster. She was not some rare genetic freak. She was a girl who lost her mother at 13, grew up in poverty, dropped out of school, and was handed an ideology that told her certain people were not human. And she believed it. She accepted it completely. And then she was handed power over those people. Unlimited, unchecked, absolute power. And she became what that power, combined with that ideology, made possible. The lesson of Irma Grese is not just about one cruel woman in World War II. It is about what happens when ordinary human beings are taught to see other human beings as less than human, and then given the power to act on that belief. It happened once. It can happen again. The only weapon against it is memory. Knowing the names, knowing the faces, knowing what was done and who did it and how it was allowed to happen. Irma Grese was 22 years old when she died. The women she sent to their deaths never got that chance. Remember them.